Albert Einstein, the genius behind the theory of relativity, once said, "If there is any religion that could cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism." Now, you might be wondering, how can the ancient wisdom of Buddhism possibly relate to the groundbreaking science of a man like Einstein? Well, in this video, we're about to bridge the gap between science and spirituality, showing you how these two seemingly different paths have more in common than you might think. Einstein's search for understanding the universe and the Buddha's quest for enlightenment both share a profound truth about the nature of reality. And today, we're going to explore how. Stay tuned, because the discoveries we're about to uncover could change the way you see both science and life itself. Albert Einstein, one of the most renowned scientists in history, known for his groundbreaking work in physics, held a perspective on spirituality that might surprise many. He once famously said, "I am a deeply religious non-believer. But if there were any religion that could cope with modern scientific needs, it would be Buddhism." This statement encapsulates a powerful resonance between Einstein's scientific view of the universe and the ancient wisdom of Buddhism. Despite their vastly different approaches, Einstein's rooted in empirical science and the Buddha's based in introspection and meditation. Their quests for truth, understanding, and enlightenment seem remarkably similar. Einstein's view of science and the universe. Einstein's scientific contributions, particularly the theory of relativity, revolutionized how we understand the universe. He shattered the long-standing concept that time and space were separate and fixed entities. Instead, he proposed that time and space are intertwined and malleable, affected by gravity and the presence of matter. His equation, E equals mc squared, demonstrated that energy and matter are interchangeable, offering a new framework for understanding the relationship between the physical world and the fundamental forces that govern it. But beyond his technical contributions, Einstein was deeply philosophical. He often spoke about the universe in terms that seemed almost mystical. His fascination with the vastness of the cosmos wasn't limited to equations and theories. It extended to the deep sense of awe he felt toward the universe's inherent order. In many ways, his work was as much about the search for meaning as it was about the search for scientific truth. Einstein was not merely trying to explain how the universe works. He was trying to understand its purpose. This quest for the underlying order of things mirrors the Buddha's journey to uncover the ultimate nature of existence. Einstein believed in a form of spirituality that aligned more closely with the principles of pantheism, as expressed by the Dutch philosopher Baruch Spinoza, whom Einstein admired. Spinoza argued that God is not a personal deity, but rather the natural order of the universe itself. Similarly, Einstein said, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the orderly harmony of what exists, not in a God who concerns himself with the fates and actions of human beings." This worldview, the idea that the universe itself is divine in its harmony and order, echoes the Buddha's view of nature as an interconnected whole governed by universal laws, such as karma and dependent origination. The Buddha's inner journey, a quest for truth. While Einstein explored the external universe, the Buddha focused his attention inward. The Buddha's quest was not to understand the cosmos through equations and physics, but to understand the nature of suffering, the mind, and the path to liberation from the cycle of birth and death. His approach was one of deep introspection, cultivating mindfulness and meditation to gain insight into the impermanence of existence and the nature of the self. Unlike the Western scientific tradition, which often seeks answers in the external world, the Buddha's approach to wisdom was rooted in self-examination. He emphasized that enlightenment comes from understanding the mind's workings, recognizing the transitory nature of thoughts, emotions, and desires, through practices like mindfulness and meditation. The Buddha showed how individuals could transcend their personal attachments and desires, ultimately freeing themselves from suffering. Despite the apparent difference in focus between Einstein's work and the Buddha's, both were engaged in a search for truth. Einstein's pursuit of scientific understanding of the external world, and the Buddha's internal quest for self-liberation both sought to uncover the ultimate nature of reality. They just approached it from different angles. The intersection of science and spirituality. While Einstein's scientific approach was empirical, rooted in observation and experimentation, the Buddha's approach was experiential and introspective. Yet both acknowledged that the universe, whether internal or external, operates according to certain laws. For Einstein, these laws were expressed through the equations of physics. For the Buddha, they were articulated as the dogma, the natural laws of existence, such as impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, and non-self, anatta. Einstein's view of the universe was not one of randomness, but one of deep, inherent order. He saw the cosmos as a vast and harmonious system, where every piece played a role in the greater whole. Similarly, the Buddha taught that the universe is not chaotic, but that it operates according to laws of cause and effect, each action leading to consequences, each thought shaping the future. This view is echoed in the Buddhist concept of karma, which is not simply about moral deeds but about the natural cause and effect relationships that govern the universe. Einstein's theory of relativity, for example, suggests that everything is interconnected. Time, space, and matter are not isolated but interdependent, much like the Buddhist concept of interdependent origination, which teaches that all phenomena arise due to causes and conditions, and nothing exists independently. In this way, both Einstein and the Buddha described a universe that is far from isolated and deterministic, but rather fluid, interdependent, and interconnected. The role of compassion and ethics. One key area where Einstein's thinking aligns closely with Buddhist principles is in the domain of ethics and morality. Einstein rejected the idea that morality must be based on fear of a personal God or divine punishment. Instead, he emphasized compassion and human connection as the foundation of ethical behavior. He famously stated, "Human ethical behavior should be based on compassion, education, and social ties. It does not need to have a religious foundation." This approach resonates deeply with the Buddha's teachings on compassion. The Buddha taught that ethical conduct is the foundation of spiritual practice. But unlike traditional religious moral systems that often rely on fear of divine retribution, the Buddha's ethical teachings are rooted in compassion and mindfulness. In Buddhism, morality arises naturally when one understands the interconnectedness of all beings and the suffering that results from harmful actions. Einstein's idea of compassion mirrors the Buddhist practice of karuna, the wish for all beings to be free from suffering. For both Einstein and the Buddha, compassion was not just a virtue. It was the path to understanding the true nature of reality. Compassion fosters empathy. And empathy enables us to see the world not just from our own limited perspective, but as part of a greater, interconnected whole. The middle way, striking a balance between extremes. In addition to compassion, both Einstein and the Buddha emphasize the importance of balance. The Buddha's middle way teaches that one should avoid the extremes of indulgence and asceticism, finding a balanced path that leads to enlightenment. Einstein, too, often spoke about the importance of humility and moderation in the face of the vast mysteries of the universe. Einstein expressed this sentiment in his famous quote, "A human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty." This view mirrors the Buddha's teaching on the importance of overcoming the illusion of the separate self. The Buddha taught that we must transcend the attachment to our individual identity and recognize the interconnectedness of all beings. This is the essence of the middle way, avoiding extremes, understanding our place within the greater whole, and cultivating compassion for all beings. The interdependence of science and spirituality. At the heart of both Einstein's and the Buddha's quests is a profound recognition of the interdependence of all things. Whether in the external universe or within the internal workings of the mind, both sought to uncover the laws that govern existence. For Einstein, these laws were expressed through the language of physics. For the Buddha, they were expressed through the teachings of the Dogma. The Buddha's teachings on impermanence, anicca, and interdependence reflect the scientific worldview of interconnectedness. Just as Einstein demonstrated that time and space are not separate but interwoven, the Buddha showed that all things are interdependent, arising and passing away due to causes and conditions. This view leads both to a deeper appreciation for the universe and a more profound sense of responsibility in how we engage with the world around us. In the end, the Buddha and Einstein, despite the differences in their approaches, both sought the same thing, a deeper understanding of the world, a recognition of the interconnectedness of all things, and a path that leads to greater wisdom and compassion. Their journeys, though different in method, ultimately converge in their shared vision of the universe as a harmonious, interconnected whole, guided by universal laws that transcend the individual self. Einstein and the Buddhist view of the self. One of the most profound areas where Einstein's and the Buddha's views intersect is their understanding of the self. Einstein often spoke about the illusion of the individual ego and the limits of human perception. His famous statement about the self as an optical delusion of consciousness resonates deeply with the Buddha's teachings on anatta, or the doctrine of no self. In Einstein's view, the human ego is a kind of prison. He recognized that the feeling of separation we experience from the world around us is a mental construct, a delusion created by our limited perception. He explained, A human being is a part of the whole, called by us universe. A part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. Similarly, the Buddha taught that our sense of self is not an immutable, eternal essence. Instead, the self is a composite of ever-changing physical and mental elements. Our attachment to this self is what leads to suffering, because it causes us to cling to something that is inherently impermanent. In Buddhist philosophy, understanding the nature of anatta, the absence of a permanent, independent self, frees us from the ego's illusions and helps us cultivate deeper wisdom and compassion. Einstein and the Buddha both viewed the self as a construct, a temporary and transient formation, shaped by conditions and experiences. For Einstein, this recognition led to a greater sense of humility and interconnectedness with the universe. For the Buddha, it was the key to liberation, as recognizing the impermanence of the self leads to freedom from suffering and attachment. Einstein's sense of awe and the Buddha's wisdom. Another interesting parallel between Einstein and the Buddha is their shared sense of awe at the vastness and mystery of the universe. Einstein was not just a scientist, he was a philosopher and a poet at heart. His deep admiration for the order and beauty of the cosmos was evident in his writing, where he often described the universe in awe-inspiring terms. In a letter written in 1929, Einstein said, "The most beautiful emotion we can experience is the mystical. It is the power of all true art and science. He to whom this emotion is a stranger, who can no longer wonder and stand wrapped in awe, is as good as dead. To know that what is impenetrable to us really exists, manifesting itself as the highest wisdom and the most radiant beauty, which our dull faculties cannot grasp, is the meaning of true religion." In many ways, this description mirrors the Buddha's approach to wisdom. For the Buddha, the path to enlightenment involved seeing the world with clear eyes, free from the distortions of greed, hatred, and delusion. But this clarity didn't mean that the world became mundane or predictable. On the contrary, it revealed the universe as an astonishing, wondrous place, full of mystery and beauty. The Buddha's teachings on mindfulness and meditation encourage us to see the world as it truly is, without the filters of our habitual judgments and attachments, allowing us to experience its profound mystery with awe and gratitude. Einstein's mysticism was not about the belief in supernatural phenomena but about the awe he felt at the order and mystery of the universe. Similarly, the Buddha's wisdom was not about blind belief in dogma but about experiencing the profound reality of existence directly, through mindfulness and insight. The role of meditation, Einstein's intellectual contemplation versus the Buddha's meditative practice. Both Einstein and the Buddha valued deep contemplation, but their practices differed significantly in approach. Einstein's intellectual contemplation was rooted in reasoning, observation, and the scientific method. He would immerse himself in problems and seek solutions through rigorous mental exercises, trying to see the world from new perspectives, as in his thought experiments on relativity. The Buddha, on the other hand, cultivated insight through meditation, especially mindfulness meditation, vipassana, which allowed him to directly experience the nature of his own mind and the world around him. Through meditation, the Buddha discovered the profound truths of impermanence, suffering, and non-self. His meditative practice was not an intellectual exercise but a direct means of knowing reality beyond conceptualization. However, despite the differences in their methods, both Einstein and the Buddha employed a form of deep, contemplative reflection. Einstein's thought experiments, such as imagining writing on a beam of light, were a form of intellectual meditation, a way to break free from conventional thinking and explore new dimensions of reality. The Buddha's practice of meditation allowed him to directly experience the nature of his mind and the world in a way that transcended ordinary perception. Both approaches ultimately lead to profound insights about the nature of reality. For Einstein, this meant understanding the interwoven fabric of time and space. For the Buddha, it meant understanding the true nature of suffering and the path to liberation. The interconnection of all things, Buddhism's dependent origination and Einstein's unified field theory. One of the most fundamental concepts in Buddhism is pratitya samutpada, or dependent origination, which teaches that all phenomena arise in dependence upon conditions. In other words, nothing exists in isolation, everything is interconnected. And the nature of reality is a web of interdependent relationships. This principle of interdependence is not only central to Buddhist teachings but also aligns with Einstein's view of the universe. Einstein spent much of his later years working on the theory of a unified field, seeking a single theory that could explain the interconnectedness of the fundamental forces of nature, gravity, electromagnetism, and the nuclear forces. While he never completed this theory, his vision of a unified field theory echoes the Buddhist understanding of the interconnection of all things. Just as Buddhism teaches that all things arise in dependence on conditions, Einstein's theory of relativity showed that time, space, and matter are interconnected and not separate entities. In his theory, the fabric of spacetime is curved by the presence of mass and energy, creating a dynamic, interconnected universe. Similarly, the Buddha's teachings on interdependent origination highlight the fluid and interconnected nature of reality, where each action, thought, and event arises due to a network of interconnected causes. Both Einstein and the Buddha saw the universe not as a collection of isolated entities but as a dynamic, interconnected system. Einstein's equations and the Buddha's teachings both point to the same underlying truth, that everything in the universe is interconnected and constantly in flux. The scientific and spiritual paths to liberation. Ultimately, both Einstein and the Buddha were seekers of liberation from ignorance, suffering, and the constraints of a limited view of reality. Einstein sought liberation through intellectual understanding, hoping that a deeper knowledge of the universe would lead to greater wisdom and a more compassionate world. The Buddha sought liberation through spiritual practice, emphasizing the importance of mindfulness, meditation, and ethical conduct to transcend the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Though their paths differed, both recognized that liberation could only come through a deep understanding of the nature of reality. For Einstein, this meant unraveling the mysteries of the universe through science. For the Buddha, it meant understanding the impermanent, interconnected nature of existence and freeing oneself from attachment, desire, and ignorance. Both paths, though different in method, ultimately converge in their recognition of the interconnectedness of all things and the importance of transcending the illusion of separation. whether through scientific exploration or spiritual practice. Both Einstein and the Buddha sought to answer the same fundamental question: what is the nature of reality? And how can we free ourselves from suffering and ignorance? In the end, their quests for truth remind us that the pursuit of wisdom, whether through science or spirituality, is not just an intellectual endeavor. It is a path that leads to liberation, inner peace, and a deeper connection with the universe and all of its inhabitants. Interconnectedness and the unity of all things, Einstein's view of the universe and the Buddha's dependent origination. One of the most profound insights shared between Einstein's theory of relativity and the Buddha's teachings is the idea of interconnectedness. Einstein, with his revolutionary insights into the nature of the universe, showed us that space and time are not separate entities but are intricately connected, forming a unified fabric that responds to the presence and motion of objects. The idea that everything in the universe is interconnected and that even time and space themselves are fluid and relational speaks to a deep philosophical truth that is echoed in Buddhism. Einstein's concept of relativity tells us that everything in the universe is interdependent, nothing exists in isolation. The same principle can be found in the Buddha's teaching of paticcasamuppada, or dependent origination. Dependent origination explains that all phenomena arise in dependence upon conditions. Nothing exists independently or permanently, and all things are interconnected through a web of causes and conditions. In this sense, both Einstein and the Buddha offer us a view of the universe as a dynamic, interconnected system, where every part is related to and influences every other part. Einstein's insight into the interwoven fabric of space and time is reflected in the Buddhist concept that all phenomena arise in dependence on one another. Both perspectives highlight the importance of understanding the interconnectedness of all things, not just in terms of physical objects, but also in terms of the mind, actions, and consciousness. The Buddha's teachings on dependent origination emphasize that our actions, thoughts, and desires create ripple effects in the world, shaping not only our lives but also the lives of others. Just as Einstein's theory of relativity shows that objects and events are interconnected through the fabric of space-time, the Buddhist teachings remind us that our actions and intentions are interwoven with the greater fabric of existence. In both cases, our understanding of interconnectedness leads to a more profound appreciation of the world and our place within it. The illusion of separation, Einstein's scientific revolution, and the Buddha's teachings on the self. Einstein's theory of relativity is also deeply connected to the Buddha's teachings on the nature of the self. Before Einstein, people generally assumed that time and space were absolute and separate from one another. However, Einstein's groundbreaking discovery showed that time and space are relative to the observer and that they are not fixed, independent entities. This realization shattered the conventional understanding of the universe, showing that reality is not as solid and separate as we once believed. In much the same way, the Buddha's teachings challenge our conventional notions of the self. According to Buddhism, the idea of a permanent, unchanging self is an illusion. The Buddha taught that what we call the self is merely a collection of ever-changing physical and mental components, our bodies, our thoughts, our desires, and our consciousness. Just as Einstein revealed that time and space are not fixed entities but relative and interconnected, the Buddha showed that our sense of self is similarly not an independent, permanent entity but a fluid, ever-changing process. This understanding of the self as an illusion is crucial to both the Buddha's path to liberation and Einstein's view of the universe. The Buddha's teachings on anatta, non-self, suggest that clinging to the idea of a permanent, separate self leads to suffering. When we believe that we are separate from the world around us, we create attachments, desires, and aversions that bind us to suffering. The Buddha's path to freedom lies in realizing that the self is not a permanent, isolated entity but a temporary collection of interconnected parts that arise due to conditions. Einstein's view of the universe similarly suggests that separation is an illusion. In his famous equation E=mc², Einstein demonstrated that matter and energy are interchangeable, showing that everything in the universe is connected through the fabric of space-time. Just as his work dismantled the illusion of a fixed and separate universe, the Buddha's teachings dissolve the illusion of a permanent, separate self. Both Einstein and the Buddha challenge us to let go of the false notion of separation, whether it is the belief in a separate self or the idea that time and space exist independently, and to embrace a view of interconnectedness, where everything is related and everything is in constant flux. This realization is liberating, as it frees us from the chains of attachment, ego, and the desire for permanence, allowing us to experience life more fully and with greater wisdom. The power of mind, Einstein's intellectual pursuit and the Buddha's mindfulness practice. Another important point of convergence between Einstein's ideas and the Buddha's teachings is the role of the mind in shaping our experience of reality. Einstein believed that the mind plays a crucial role in how we understand and engage with the universe. For Einstein, intellectual curiosity and the pursuit of knowledge were paramount. And he famously said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existing." This intellectual pursuit was not only about finding answers to the mysteries of the universe but also about cultivating a sense of wonder and awe that kept the mind open to new possibilities. Similarly, the Buddha emphasized the importance of the mind in shaping our experience of the world. Through the practice of mindfulness, the Buddha taught that we can train our minds to see things as they truly are, free from the distortions of attachment, ignorance, and desire. The Buddha's teachings on the mind are foundational to his path to liberation, as the mind is the root of both our suffering and our freedom. In Buddhist practice, cultivating mindfulness allows us to become more aware of our thoughts, emotions, and reactions, helping us to break free from the habitual patterns of thinking that keep us trapped in cycles of suffering. By training the mind through meditation and self-awareness, we can attain a deeper understanding of our true nature and the nature of reality. Einstein's intellectual pursuit, like the Buddha's practice of mindfulness, was not just about accumulating knowledge but about seeking deeper understanding and cultivating an openness to the mysteries of the universe. Einstein saw his scientific work as a way of uncovering the fundamental truths of the cosmos, while the Buddha saw his spiritual practice as a way of uncovering the truth of the mind and its potential for liberation. Both Einstein and the Buddha understood that the mind has a powerful role in shaping our experience of the world. Whether through scientific inquiry or spiritual practice, the mind is the key to unlocking a deeper understanding of reality. Einstein's intellectual curiosity mirrors the Buddha's emphasis on mindfulness and awareness, showing that the pursuit of knowledge, whether through science or spirituality, can lead to a greater understanding of the universe and the liberation of the mind. The search for truth, Einstein's scientific exploration and the Buddha's path to enlightenment. At the heart of both Einstein's scientific exploration and the Buddha's spiritual journey is the search for truth. Einstein spent his life seeking to understand the fundamental laws of nature. And his discoveries in physics reshaped our understanding of the universe. He was driven by a deep curiosity about the world. A desire to uncover the truths that lie beneath the surface of everyday experience. Similarly, the Buddha's path to enlightenment was motivated by a deep desire to understand the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. For both Einstein and the Buddha, the pursuit of truth was not just about intellectual achievement or personal gain. It was about uncovering the nature of reality and finding a way to alleviate suffering. Einstein sought the truth through science, using observation, experimentation, and reason to understand the physical world. The Buddha sought the truth through introspection, meditation, and ethical conduct, seeking to understand the mind and its relationship to suffering. Both understood that the search for truth requires humility and openness. Einstein famously said, "The more I learn, the more I realize how much I don't know." Similarly, the Buddha encouraged his followers to remain open to new insights and to never accept teachings without personal investigation. In both cases, the search for truth is a lifelong journey, a journey that requires curiosity, humility, and a willingness to look beyond the surface to uncover deeper truths about ourselves and the universe. Science and ethics, Einstein's moral compass and the Buddha's compassionate path. One of the most significant similarities between Einstein's philosophy and the Buddha's teachings is their shared emphasis on ethics, compassion, and the importance of moral conduct in shaping human lives. Though Einstein was primarily a scientist, he often spoke about the ethical responsibilities of individuals and societies. Einstein rejected the idea of a personal God but believed in the profound power of human compassion. He stated that human ethical behavior should be based on compassion, education, and social ties and needs. It does not need to have a religious foundation. In his view, morality should not be driven by fear of divine punishment or hope for rewards, but should arise from a genuine concern for the well-being of others and the world at large. In much the same way, the Buddha taught that ethical conduct is a cornerstone of spiritual practice. The 5 precepts, for instance, guide Buddhists to refrain from killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, and intoxicants. These precepts are not arbitrary rules but ethical principles designed to cultivate a compassionate and mindful life. The Buddha's ethical teachings are grounded in the idea that our actions have consequences, not only for ourselves but for others as well. Just as Einstein believed that ethics should be rooted in human compassion rather than divine command, the Buddha emphasized that ethical conduct is essential for cultivating wisdom, peace, and liberation. Einstein's moral views align closely with Buddhist principles in that both reject the idea of morality based on external authority, whether that authority is a deity or a societal structure. Instead, both emphasize personal responsibility, compassion, and the recognition of the interconnectedness of all beings. Einstein's call for human compassion and the Buddha's teachings on loving kindness both point toward the same ultimate goal: a world in which individuals act out of love and compassion for others, creating a more just and harmonious society. while Einstein's ethics were rooted in a deep concern for the well-being of humanity. The Buddha's ethical path is deeply connected to the cultivation of wisdom and mindfulness. In Buddhist practice, ethical conduct is not just about avoiding harm to others but also about cultivating a sense of moral clarity that arises from an understanding of interdependence and the impermanent nature of all things. Both Einstein and the Buddha saw ethics not as a set of rigid rules but as a natural expression of wisdom and compassion. The cosmic dance, Einstein's E equals mc squared and the Buddha's emptiness. Albert Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared, is one of the most profound revelations in modern science. The equation states that energy, E, and mass, m, are interchangeable, and that the amount of energy in a given system is equal to the mass of that system multiplied by the speed of light squared. This equation suggests that everything in the universe, from the tiniest particles to the largest galaxies, is fundamentally interconnected and that matter and energy are two expressions of the same underlying reality. In Buddhist philosophy, the concept of emptiness, shunyata, mirrors this idea of interconnectedness. Emptiness is the teaching that all things are empty of inherent existence and that nothing exists independently or permanently. Just as Einstein's equation reveals that matter and energy are two expressions of the same reality, the Buddha's teaching of emptiness reveals that all phenomena are empty of independent existence and are interconnected through a vast web of causes and conditions. Both Einstein and the Buddha challenge us to rethink our conventional understanding of reality. Einstein's work encourages us to see the universe not as a collection of separate, independent objects but as a unified, interconnected whole. The Buddha's teaching of emptiness invites us to see that the things we encounter in the world, whether they are objects, people, or experiences, do not have an independent, permanent essence but are constantly changing and interdependent. In both cases, the apparent solidity and permanence of the world are illusions, and understanding the true nature of reality requires us to look beyond surface appearances. Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared, suggests that everything in the universe is interconnected at a fundamental level. That matter and energy are simply different manifestations of the same underlying substance. This concept aligns closely with the Buddha's teaching of interdependence and emptiness, which points to the idea that all things are interconnected and that there is no permanent, separate self or essence behind any phenomenon. The role of suffering, Einstein's search for meaning and the Buddha's Four Noble Truths. One of the central concerns in both Einstein's philosophy and the Buddha's teachings is the question of suffering. For Einstein, the mysteries of the universe were not just about uncovering the laws of physics but also about understanding the meaning of human existence. In a letter to a friend, Einstein reflected on the human condition, saying, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." This statement reveals Einstein's awareness of the paradox of human existence, the fact that we can understand the laws of the universe even though our own lives seem to be filled with uncertainty, suffering, and impermanence. The Buddha's teachings are fundamentally concerned with suffering, or dukkha. The Buddha's first noble truth is the recognition that life is marked by suffering. That suffering is an inherent part of the human condition. This suffering arises from birth, aging, illness, and death, as well as from the impermanence of all things and our attachment to them. The Buddha's path to liberation involves understanding the nature of suffering and learning how to transcend it by letting go of attachment and ignorance. Einstein's search for meaning in the face of suffering aligns with the Buddha's teachings on the nature of existence. Both Einstein and the Buddha recognized that suffering is an inherent part of life. But they also saw that there is a way to approach this suffering that leads to greater understanding and freedom. Einstein's intellectual curiosity about the universe was driven in part by his desire to understand the deeper meaning of existence. Just as the Buddha's quest for enlightenment was driven by a desire to understand the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. The Buddha's Four Noble Truths provide a framework for understanding and overcoming suffering. The first noble truth acknowledges the reality of suffering. The second noble truth identifies its causes: greed, hatred, and ignorance. The third noble truth offers the possibility of cessation, the end of suffering. And the fourth noble truth outlines the path to liberation, known as the Eightfold Path. Einstein's scientific inquiry, while not explicitly focused on suffering, shares a similar desire to understand the underlying causes of the mysteries of the universe. Both Einstein and the Buddha sought to bring light to the unknown and to find a way to transcend the limitations of human existence. The scientific spirit and the Buddhist mindset: inquiry, exploration, and liberation. At the core of both Einstein's scientific approach and the Buddha's spiritual practice is the spirit of inquiry. Einstein was constantly searching for deeper answers, driven by an insatiable curiosity about the workings of the universe. His work was not just about solving equations but about uncovering the mysteries of existence. Similarly, the Buddha's spiritual path was a journey of inquiry into the nature of the mind, the nature of suffering, and the nature of reality itself. The Buddha encouraged his followers to question everything, to investigate the truth for themselves, and to rely on personal experience and understanding rather than blind belief. Both Einstein and the Buddha embody the scientific spirit, Einstein in the realm of physical science and the Buddha in the realm of spiritual science. The Buddha's teachings on mindfulness and meditation encourage an empirical investigation of the mind, allowing individuals to observe their thoughts, emotions, and reactions with the same clarity and precision that a scientist might observe the natural world. In both cases, inquiry is the key to liberation, whether that liberation is from ignorance, suffering, or the limitations of human understanding. The connection between Einstein's scientific approach and the Buddha's spiritual path lies in their shared commitment to discovering truth through investigation, exploration, and experience. Both understood that true freedom comes from the ability to transcend the limitations of the ordinary mind and to engage with the world in a way that is open, inquisitive, and free from the constraints of dogma or blind belief. Fascinating, isn't it? Both Einstein and the Buddha were on parallel journeys, one seeking to understand the physical universe, and the other exploring the infinite depths of the mind. They may have used different methods, but they both arrived at the same conclusion. The universe is interconnected, and compassion is key to understanding our place within it. So, the next time you face a challenge or question in your life, remember, you don't have to look far for answers. Whether in science, spirituality, or within your own mind. If you enjoyed this exploration into the relationship between science and Buddhism, don't forget to hit like, Subscribe to Buddhist Balance for more deep dives like this. And share this video with anyone who might benefit from this insightful journey. And as always, feel free to leave your thoughts or questions in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for watching. And remember, the path to understanding is endless. Let's walk it together.